Ready? Hi, my name's Dale Adams, and today I am speaking on this chat with Tony. Would you like to introduce yourself, Tony?
Hi there, it's Tony Morris. The company's Belvedere Wills and Estate Planning, and my focus predominantly with that business, though, is lasting power of attorney documents.
Okay. Well, lasting power of attorney, for those that don't know, what is it?
Lasting power of attorney is when a trusted family member or a friend is able to, is given the opportunity to act on your behalf if you lose capacity, or if at some later stage, depending on how the document is set up, you're just old. For argument's sake, I use this all the time. You're 105. You have full mental capacity, but you actually don't have the means to be able to do things. You're tired. You want somebody to help you. And these documents will legally give the ability for those people to act on your behalf within a structured framework.
Yeah, I've actually have that with a client of mine at the moment whose mum's 84 and not very well, and was the lasting power of attorney for her husband, and he was in her home, and she had capacity, but really she didn't have ability, and so she didn't want to be on it anymore. So we had to obviously make some changes in that regard. And of course, you can actually do that, can't you? You can take somebody off it if they really don't want to be on it.
Yeah, that's a lovely description, that they've got capacity, they just don't have the ability. And that's an excellent one, because a lot of people, especially when these documents are done online, they maybe don't pick up on that, and they'll see the box that says only when they've lost capacity, and they believe that that is the safety net. Nobody can interact with my life whilst I've got capacity, but they can't anyway, even if you've ticked the box to imply that you want it done with immediate effect, because you have to give consent. So if people are acting without your consent, then clearly there's an issue there on that side. So there is the safety net set in place, but you're right, and it's a good document from that. And obviously the risks, what we're talking about is if you don't have the document, how that kind of plays out. And that's more so, to me, a concern, especially when I've met people where they have dismissed the document. They've been advised to use it by the medical profession, but they've assessed their life. And in one particular case, a lady looked and believed that the document wasn't needed. They didn't have a great wealth, lived a simple life, and therefore couldn't understand the desires for the document. Didn't seek any guidance. If they had, they'd have understood the ramification, because the document isn't just about money going out. It's also, on the property and finance document, it's about assessing and helping ensure money comes in, and being able to talk if the people are on benefits or pensions and or any kind of financial input into the family. And this is where this one particular client felt very foul of not having the document, because one simple day she'd assessed the situation. She'd allowed her husband to lose capacity with dementia. Sadly, it was certified that he had lost capacity and was and still is in care. And a simple act of picking the post up, looking at some documentation that had come in from her husband via a pensions company, realizing that the address was incorrect, choosing to speak to them. And during that conversation, whatever was said, the pensions company established he'd lost capacity. And secondly, she hadn't got lasting power of attorney for property and finance. They suspended payments because the payments were clearly not being managed by him. He'd lost capacity. And then they refused to speak to her thereafter. So here was a lady that was faced with a situation where a sizable amount of money was coming into her estate, her day-to-day funding, that had been now suspended. And that meant ultimately she didn't have the money to pay her bills. And on the horizon was the potential of actually losing a property, because she couldn't afford to make the monthly payments. She couldn't resolve the problem because she didn't have lasting power of attorney. And her only solution was to then go to the Court of Protection and look at a deputyship, which is going to cost her if she goes down that road, and she's still undecided as to how she's going to go, because she's looked at the costs and realised this far outweighs the costs of, and I certainly won't belittle the product by saying a basic lasting power of attorney document, but she now realises the mistakes that she's made.
Well, from a government perspective, it's £82 to file a lasting power of attorney
Yeah,
per
absolutely.
application. Obviously,
Yeah.
if you seek the professional help, then you have to pay for that. But for a deputyship, it's 850 plus VAT per application. And of
Yep.
course, it's like the LPA, there's two. There's one for property and finance, and there's one for your welfare. So health and welfare. And of course, as you say, that's a considerably different cost, isn't it? And also, you've got that whole process to go through then.
Yeah. And there's several things, because it can take 3 to 9 months. And if the judge is unhappy, it can go 12 months longer, or over 12 months. You've got, it might not be her that's actually granted the deputyship. It might be that they decide, because of whatever reason, that they would prefer somebody else to be it. And it's the judge that makes the decision as to who the deputy is. And then the judge also has the right to request that when they go back to court, and the length of the deputyship, that actually they may have to submit audited accounts, because at the end of the day, the judge is accountable. So that judge has the right to say, actually, when you come back, I want to see a set of filed accounts. So on top of that figure, you may have to pay an accountant to verify that the money that's been spent has been spent in accordance with what they're submitting, and that the bank balance matches, etc., etc. So there are so many hidden costs, and suddenly a structure that lady might have to work with now that far outweighs the structure of a lasting power of attorney document. And it's a headache for her, simply because she assessed a very simple lifestyle, believing that there was no need for this document. And it's not about the value of your estate. It's about the ability to interact, even if it's only just with one government body or a pensions company, to continue the financial input into that family continues.
Well, we had it with a client that I'm working with, right down to Sky TV,
Yeah.
ET. We couldn't get anything changed because all of the utility bills were in his name, his sole name, even though they jointly owned the property, had lived there for many, many years together, had been married a ridiculous length of time, a wonderful length of time, I should say, really. But everything was just in his name. So when he then went into care and lost capacity, and she then, as I said, had ability, but capacity but not ability, even when she tried to speak with them, they would do it because she'd got the lasting power of attorney. But she didn't want to do any of it, and she didn't understand most of it because she'd not had to deal with it for all of these years. He'd done it. So it was passed down to her daughter, but they wouldn't speak to her daughter because honestly, it was the mother or the wife who'd got the attorneyship. So then it took a whole process to go through to get her removed and make sure that the correct LPA was in place so that the daughter could then speak on their behalf. Even that was quite a rigmarole to get organised. But as you say, it's not just, although we are looking at pensions, etc. too, it's not just those. It's just what you consider to be basic bills that you've got coming in if your name isn't on them.
Yeah, and I've had cases where, and I'm not going to name names of the suppliers, but it's almost like a marketing, not marketing opportunity, an opportunity to make money, because they can fall into the category of, we can't change it, you're not the recognised account holder. And they will rake money in month after month after month because they refuse to cancel the direct debit, or they refuse to cancel the payment, as it were. And they can continue. People are frightened to cancel the direct debit, is what I was trying to say. And so this bill goes on being paid month after month because the people that are trying to help the person that's lost capacity can't change it. They're frightened to, in effect, stop the direct debit, and money's going out unnecessarily out of the estate because these large organisations know exactly what they're doing, and they can play the law because they have every right to refuse the right for somebody to speak on their behalf. So there's there's a sinister side to this as well that is very sad. And you're right. In this lady's instance, it was about money coming in with pensions, but it also allows people the opportunity, a lasting power of attorney document does, to apply for certain means tested benefits that that person now might be able to be accredited for. Without the document in place, none of this can take place. So valuable funding for the care of that particular individual could be gained with somebody that has got lasting power of attorney for property and finance. But without it, the government has every right to refuse to interact with the people, thus missing out on the potential of bringing hard-earned revenue into the family home.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the finance side. Obviously, you've got the health and welfare too. If it's not in place, then you're losing control of actually the care of your loved one.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that to me is heartbreaking as well, because that can mean that they are receiving care or not receiving care that really is what they would want. Okay, so I change that and say that again, really, is that they're not receiving care that you would want them to have.
Yeah.
Are being given care that as a family you would have refused. So it really affects it that way too, if you don't have them in.
I had lasting power of attorney for health and welfare from my mum. She had dementia. Had it not been put in place, so I have ignored it, believing that as next of kin, I had every right to speak. I'm the only child. I was there. I was also her carer for something like 8 years. Now, when she went into a care home for a very short period of time, the room that she was in was a very poor room. There was mixed match of furniture with doors hanging off and a very drab environment. And my mum's mental health was severely affected by this over even in a short period of time. I asked for the room to be, or to her to be moved to a different room. That was declined. On the evening, I went back with lasting power of attorney documents, and she was moved with immediate effect because the power of the documents. But if I hadn't had those documents, and I'd have just thought, oh, next of kin, I will be able to manage my mum's affairs. I'll be able to manage the interaction with the health service. I'm an articulated individual who has a persuasive way about him, and therefore I should be able to protect my mum that way. No, they were not interested until I was able to produce that document. So then going back to the alternative to that, had I have seen that room and been appalled as I was, I then have to go down the deputy route. But it's then not necessarily granted to me. It could be 9 months. She passed shortly after that, so that would have not helped in the short term. And it's a road that people are faced with if they don't have the document. That a lot of them choose not to because it's complex, it's expensive, and they don't understand the process. And there is an opportunity there, sadly, for our industry to make a large amount of money out of it, which again is equally, a sad side to this whole tale, as it were. And people will decline that, and then the person is just left at the whim of the health service or the care home that they're involved with. And if that care home doesn't have the focus on the client, their client, and your parent or your next of kin or loved one, then it's a difficult scenario. And clearly, there is a lot of people out there with regret, remorse, because they were given the opportunity. The first thing that lady, the story that I spoke to you about, the first thing that the carer did when her husband was diagnosed with dementia, which is exactly the same thing that was diagnosed when my mum had dementia, was, have you got lasting power of attorney in place? The answer for me was no, but I know how to do it, and we're clearly going to do it. That person was no, and her decision ultimately was to continue to be no, most probably on cost. From the conversation with that client, it was definitely cost decision. For me, it was imperative that I got it at any cost, because I wanted to be able to ensure that on both my mum's finances, I protect my inheritance. I'll be very blunt and honest about that. But also to protect her interaction with the care system and how she was treated. So I'm very glad I did it. And I look now at I don't want to sit there with remorse, and a lot of people do, because maybe it's not explained to them, lasting power of attorney. But sadly, we do have blogs like this. We have opportunities to go out and research. the benefits to it, and I don't see any negative, if I'm brutally honest. Martin Lewis once said on one of his shows that anybody over the age of 18 should have lasting power of attorney documents. Now, my initial reaction to that is most probably not, because an 18-year-old, the person who loves an 18-year-old won't be the person who loves that 18-year-old when they're 65. They'll be a totally different set of people. But I get the point that
Yes.
we have to assess anybody over the age of 18 should be looking at lasting power of attorney documents. And there should be a trigger point in their life when they say, actually, now's the right time for me to do it. Because it can have so many permutations throughout life that where there's a benefit to them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because part of what I do is try to encourage people to plan ahead of time early.
Absolutely.
And not leave it to the last minute when, unfortunately, it can be just too late. And I once heard of somebody who went into a care home, and because nobody had lasting power of attorney, as soon as they were put into the care home actually took responsibility for their health and welfare. And it was totally then up to the care home how they were treated, what treatment they got. It was literally, the power was in the hands of the carers in the care home. And that, to me, was exceptionally scary. I mean, my mum only went in for respite care, but we didn't have lasting power of attorney for health and welfare. We had it for finance, but it was never done. And at the time, obviously, part of what happened with my mum is why I started doing the work that I'm doing. She wasn't in there very long, but my mum was actually injured in the care home and was removed from the care home unconscious, didn't come out of hospital, and died. Now, my thought is, could you imagine if she had ended up in there for a long period of time and they were the people responsible for caring for her because they didn't care for her properly in the 5 days she was in there? She was only there 5 days before she was taken out in an ambulance. So, unfortunately, there are stories about care homes, and of course, unfortunately, I have one of them. But there are some fantastic care homes, and there are a lot of lovely, lovely carers. I'm not sort of saying that it's everybody, but we want to care for our family and our loved ones the way we would want it to be done. And I think, therefore, it's extremely important from both sides. And my concern with, obviously, what you're saying is the deputyship is the difficulty is in actually getting that in place. So you have to pay the £850 plus that per application, and then it goes to court. And from what you're saying, there's quite a long period of time then through application.
The judge will pontificate. Ultimately, the judge will decide who is the deputyship or who is the deputy. More often than not, it is the correct person. Let's not dramatize it too much. But they do have a right, if they've got concerns, to put a professional person in there. And it can also depend on the wealth as well. If there's concerns over wealth, they will certainly bring in an independent person, and they have the right to do that. And then, of course, it's the ongoing costs. A lasting power of attorney document, when it's in place, is there until passing with no additional costs. A deputyship there are ongoing costs, and if that judge wishes to enforce a structure in place where there's greater accountability via an accountant, then they have the right to do that. So suddenly you're having to jump through a lot of hoops. There's a lot more protocol. It's a harder process because not only are you focusing on the care of the individual, you're also having to focus on the structure in which the judge has set in place that you've got to work with. And that can be very demanding. And you're doing all of this because at some point in the past, you've made a decision to ignore something that is vitally important. And therefore, that's the frustrating thing for me. When I'm talking to any clients that is borderline, and I have a document that I send to any client that is interested that talks about lasting power of attorney document compared to deputyship. And it's a very, very clear and precise. This is the sensible thing to do. In effect, this is the risk of not getting it and there being a very unexpected loss of capacity. Now, it might be with dementia that we still have time to catch an application while that person still has mental capacity. So putting that seed into people's minds now, most probably, even though it may not generate a desire to do the lasting power of attorney documents now, at least it gives them a real understanding that the risk is greater than they most probably think, and it reduces their mistake, the risk of a mistake, I suppose, basically. But it is so imperative that people review this and realize just how important it is, because by not doing lasting power of attorney, they are in effect tying the hands of the ones that love them behind their back, but it almost not expecting them. That's maybe a bit harsh, but yeah, wanting them to do everything that's right by them, but actually they've not done right by their own attorney, because they've declined the ability to put a structure in place, leaving that attorney with no alternative than a far more structured environment that they have to go down.
Yeah. No, the first thing we did after my mum died was get one put in place for my dad, because, you know, and when I've gone through the, obviously the end of life sort of facilitation training and planning. So it was part of that for us to also organise our own. And I think it is so, so important. So I completely agree with you, though I didn't really know anything about the deputyship process. And now you've just given some information about it. I think it really is just another way of saying, consider your LPA.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
something in
Yeah.
place. But 8250 plus the cost of somebody to help you put it together correctly, for that few £100, you can literally save thousands.
Absolutely.
And I mean, care home costs can be £7,000 a month. So if you can get some help to pay for those, like you say, if you can then speak to government, make sure you get pensions money coming in. Again, deal with even utility companies, whatever, because like you say, it's anything and everything to do with finance, isn't it? That you are given basically permission to deal with on that person's behalf. So really important.
Yeah. And you look at a basic direct debit, like you've alluded to, which is an excellent example, because it's those little things that people don't think about, where it's restricted. They can't do it. And somebody's paid me just to do lasting power of attorney because they want to change 2 direct debits, and they can't do it. And they're just literally at the wit's end. And this is the only solution that they've got to it. And these utility companies will play on that. And if you add that up over the course of 18 months, 2 years, while you keep putting it off, oh no, we don't need to deal with it, etc., that's more than sufficiently covered the cost of paying somebody to do it, and the registration fee. And then there's so much more accessible to it. And a lot of people will use the lasting power of attorney document to, for argument's sake, rent mum and dad's house out, or mum's house out when she's in care. And that money can go to care, which then ultimately protects the family asset, because they're utilizing it, they're generating a revenue. And only lasting power of attorney documents will allow you to do something like that, because you can't sign the rental agreement on behalf of parent, because again, you're not the owner of the property. So there's all little things like this that will help that revenue keep coming in, but it's only if the person, the donor, the parent, in often cases, sees the benefit of it. And it's very important that they not only see the benefit of the document, they understand the ramifications of not having it and having an unexpected loss of capacity. And that could be a fall. I had a client recently where she went on a walking holiday. She fell, caught her head, was unconscious for 16 weeks, nearly lost the purchase of a brand new property. Her children had to be supported financially out of the country. She was an Hungarian national, and her family had to pay for the kids because there was no access to a wage. A wage was being paid, but there was no ability to access it. She instantly took out lasting power of attorney documents when she'd recovered and was released from hospital, because she totally understood the definition, but that family would have been faced with it. So when we talk about Martin Lewis and his desire over the age of 18, there's a classic example. That lady was in her 40s, but instantly did it because she realized never again did she want to put her family through this traumatic experience. And they couldn't afford. They looked at deputyships and they just couldn't afford it. There was not the funds there to be able to go and get it.
Right. Well, I think you've definitely given a compelling case as to why
Thank you.
we need to do it, and I 100% agree with you. So if somebody wants to get hold of you after hearing this and you talk, how do they contact you, Tony?
Well, my mobile number is 07377. That's 07377 988 741. That's 988 741. And that's the best. They can Google Belvedere Wills, our website, look at our reviews, etc., and see what we're about.
Okay,
And
what is
thank you
your
very much.
URL for your website?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What is your URL for your website?
Do you know what? I don't know. It's the only answer to that.
I'll put that bit out.
Cut that bit out. I apologize.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine, but if they could, we'll go back to that. So, okay, so they can search you online, or contact you on your mobile.
Contact me on my mobile, yeah.
Okay, I'll find the website address. I'll probably just pop it on the end of this chat.
Okay.
And been lovely to speak with you.
I think it's belvederewills.com. I apologize. It's belvederewills.com.
Okay. All right.
Brilliant.
We'll put your contact. Oh, okay, start again. We'll put your contact details on the end of this chat anyway. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again.
You will. Been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.